Welcome back to She Takes on the World TV. I'm your host, Natalie McNeil, and this is the Kwik Habits series with world-renowned memory and brain performance expert, Jim Kwik. Let's dive into today's habits. So, Jim, I know that you read a lot, and actually some of the most successful people that we know in the world talk about how much they read. Warren Buffett says that he reads up to 80% of his time.
That's amazing. Which
sounds like it would be impossible, but I know that you have a lot of techniques for being able to read faster and to absorb that information as well. Right. So can you share with us some of your reading techniques?
So as you said, the leaders are readers, right? I remember I gave a talk in Silicon Valley, and afterwards Bill Gates comes up to me and we start talking about the future of education, and I ask him if he can have any one superpower, what would it be? And he says, Jim, the ability to read faster. And I know Warren Buffett has been known to say that he's probably wasted 10 years of his life reading slowly. And Oprah is a very strong reader. Tony Robbins is a very strong reader. Leaders are readers, right? The challenge is the average person really doesn't read that often. Books to improve themselves and their business. They maybe read 1 or 2 books a year. And they say that the average CEO reads about 4 to 5 a month. And you need to be, because if somebody has decades of experience and you can sit down in a few days and read that book, then you could download decades into days. And that's such an advantage for today's entrepreneur. And so I like to get people reading 1 book a week. For 4.5 years, I actually read 1 book a day. Every single day for
1 book a day.
Right. And here's the thing, it's never magic. There's always a method behind the magic. But I like to get people realistically doing 1 a week, 52 books a year, because that's such a huge advantage. And so what I do is, and now even if you're not a speed reader, right, we do programs on teaching people how to read faster, like 300% faster. So essentially read something maybe in 15 or 20 minutes that normally takes an hour. And the reason why it's important is this. Let's say you've spent about 4 hours a day reading websites and blogs and newspapers and books and emails and all the things we have to read. That means if you could just double your reading speed, you could save 2 hours a day. What's 2 hours a day over the course of a year? It's like 730 hours. Or even if you just save 1 hour a day over the course of a year, that's 365 hours. How many 40-hour work weeks is that? That's about, it's a little math here. We have a whole mental math program. It's about 9 40-hour work weeks. That means saving 1 hour a day is like 9 40-hour work weeks, which is like 2 months of productivity that you get back. Imagine getting 2 months of productivity.
It's amazing.
To apply to your business, just saving 1 hour a day.
What I would worry about, or what I'm afraid of if I'm reading twice as fast as I usually do, is, am I still absorbing that information?
And I think a lot of people could relate to that, right? Because traditional speed reading is more associated with skimming or skipping words or getting the gist of what you read.
Yes.
And maybe because I grew up with learning challenges, or I started with memory training, like I don't think it makes sense to read something unless you really understand and retain it. And that's really the important part. Like a lot of my students, they're medical doctors and they're financial advisors, they're attorneys. You don't want your medical doctor just to get the gist of what she's reading, right? And so here's the key, what people need to understand. And we have programs in over 150 countries online, so we get a lot of feedback. We find that the faster you read, actually, the better your comprehension, because the better your focus. Meaning this, your brain is this incredible supercomputer, but when you read, you feed it 1 word at a time. Metaphorically, we're like starving our own mind. And if you don't give your brain the stimulus it needs, it'll seek entertainment elsewhere in the form of distraction. And so a lot of people, have you ever read a page in a book, you get to the end and just forget what you just read? And you go back and you reread it and you still don't know what you just read? The reason why it's a challenge is because you're reading too slowly. And it's kind of like if you're driving a car going 15, 20 miles an hour in your neighborhood. You're not really focused on driving. You are drinking your coffee and you're texting even though you shouldn't. You're thinking about the dry cleaning. You're talking to a friend. You're singing a song. I saw someone the other day reading the newspaper, right? It's crazy.
Driving?
Yes, because there were like a little bit of traffic and it's dangerous, right?
No.
But when you're going 15 or 20 miles an hour, you could try to do five different things. But let's say and that's equivalent of reading slowly. But if you're, let's say, racing cars and you're going down a straightaway at 200 miles an hour, do you have more or less focus? You have a lot more focus. You're not trying to think about, trying to text, you're not trying to have a conversation, not thinking about the clients, right? You're completely focused on what's in front of you. And that's the equivalent of reading. When you read faster, you have better comprehension because you have better focus. Because when people read slowly, their attention goes elsewhere. Like, how many people do you know use reading as a sedative? Reading as a sedative, meaning they pick up a book to help them to fall asleep.
Yes.
And earlier we were talking about information combined with emotion becomes a long-term memory. But if reading for you is an emotion of zero times anything is going to be zero, right? So some people read so painfully slow, it puts them to sleep, right? And that's not the association you want. So what I did was I did some research and I found out on Amazon that the medium number of words per book is about 64,000 words. And so I want to teach you how to be able to read one book a week without speed reading even. So just knowing there's 64,000 words in a book, the average person, let's say, reads about 200 words per minute. And if you divide that into, if you take the 64,000 words divided by the 200, you have about 320 minutes, meaning it takes about 320 minutes to get through the average book, right? And that sounds like a lot, but if you divide that by 7, that's approximately 45 minutes a day. 45 minutes of reading a day will get you one book a week, which will get you 52 books a year. And what kind of advantage would you have, anyone who's watching, if they could read one book on negotiation, one on sales, one on hiring, one on training, one on wellness and relationships, all these things. And so that's a huge advantage, because the big thing you save is you save time from trial and error, making your own mistakes.
Yeah. So, I'm taking this on in my life right now as well. I started a few weeks ago, the one book a week. So that is something I'm definitely committed to.
Cool. And I'll give you a couple of brain hacks. So what I'm doing as part of my morning routine is I'm just sitting and I'm just reading for 20 minutes or so, right? Okay. Because here's the thing, if you could read 3 times faster, it doesn't take 45 minutes, you could do it in 15 minutes, right? And that's why the efficiency is. So let me give you one brain hack on actually what'll boost your focus and boost your speed. Right?
Amazing.
So when I'm reading a book, most people when they read, they just open up to where they left off and they just go, read like this, right? And what I recommend though is this. There are a lot of obstacles that get in the way from you reading faster and understanding what you read. One of them is lack of education, meaning that you're not born with the ability to read. It's a skill that you learn and you developed. But when's the last time you took a class called reading? How old were you? Like maybe 8 years old, maybe? I was
going to say 7, 8.
Right, and so has the difficulty and demand increased since then? Of course, but how we read, most of us, is still like a 7-year-old. So first, get the right training. The second obstacle to effective reading is lack of focus, which we talked about. You have to read faster to get better focus. But the third obstacle to effective reading, this is the big one a lot of people don't know about, subvocalization. Subvocalization.
Okay, and what is that?
So have you ever noticed that when you read something to yourself, you hear that inner voice inside your head reading along with you?
Yes.
That inner voice? Hopefully it's your own voice, it's not someone else's voice. The reason why it's a challenge is if you have to say all the words in order to understand it, that means your reading speed is limited to your talking speed, but not your thinking speed. That's why many people could listen to podcasts or audiobooks at 1.5 or 2.0 times faster, because they could think a lot faster than someone could talk. And here's the thing, do you need to pronounce words like New York City to understand what New York City is, or computer to understand what computer is? The fastest readers, they don't pronounce the words as much. They know it by sight, not by sound. And so just like when you see a stop sign, you don't say to yourself, stop, but you understand what it means. 95% of the words in this book are what they call sight words, words that you don't have to pronounce. So, and then the big one though, another big one is regression. One of the bad habits that people, when they read, that keeps them from reading faster, is they go back and back skip. Have you ever noticed you're rereading words or go back and rereading whole lines by accident? And so upwards of 25% or more can be spent just rereading stuff unconsciously. Wow. And so one brain hack that could help with some of those obstacles is using what I call a visual pacer when you read. Your finger, a highlighter, a pen, a pencil, a mouse on a computer, something to direct your focus. And what I mean by that is notice, and I'll give you the reasons why. It's interesting that when you teach children to read, they'll automatically want to use their finger to help them focus until we tell them not to. But in actuality, using your finger while you read, just underlining the words, will boost your reading speed. Get this, 25 to 50%.
Wow.
You get a 25-50% lift just using your finger. Some people actually double their reading speed who are watching this, just underlining the words with their finger. I mean, it's remarkable. But here's the reason why it works. First of all, children do it, so it's organic to them. Second of all, you do it. Like most people don't use their finger when they read, but if I asked you to count the number of lines you read in 1 minute to see your reading rate, everyone will go like this. 100% will use a visual pacer to keep them focused. The other reason why I use your finger while you read is your eyes are attracted to motion. because it's like when we were hunter-gatherers, if you had to look at what's going on in your environment. Like you're hunting your lunch, right? You're hunting this rabbit or this carrot, whatever your diet is, and the bush next to you moves. You have to look at that bush because number one, it could be lunch, or number two, you could be lunch, right? So you have to look at what moves. So when you're underlining the words, your eyes are being pulled through the information as opposed to your attention being pulled apart. And the last reason you use your finger while you read and to get 25, 50%, 100% lift in your reading speed is because it's how your nervous system is set up, your neurology. Certain senses work really closely together. Like for example, have you ever tasted a great piece of fruit, like right from the farmer's market or right from the vine? Like have you ever tasted a great tasting peach before? Now in actuality, you're not tasting the peach, you're actually smelling the peach. That your tongue is not capable of tasting what a peach tastes like, but your sense of smell and taste are so closely linked that your mind doesn't know the difference. It thinks it's tasting the peach. Just like your sense of smell and taste are so closely linked, so is your sense of sight and your sense of touch. That people reading with their finger will literally say they feel more in touch with their reading. In fact, when somebody loses their sense of sight, how do they read? They use like Braille, right? And they use their sense of touch. So I'd encourage everyone to use their finger while they read and test it. Don't take my word for it. Read for 60 seconds, count the number of lines that you just read, and then underline, just get used to underlining a little bit, practice a little bit, just for a few minutes, and then retime yourself. That second number will be 25, 50% or more. It's incredible.
What do you think of audiobooks? Because audiobooks are, I would say, the way that most people are reading right now, at least in my networks of entrepreneurs. A lot of people are using Audible. So
yeah, I agree. I think it's nice to have, like, especially on your commute and if you're driving, that you could turn your car into a university on wheels, and you could have an MBA in just a couple of years of just listening to audiobooks. So I am a fan of that. I'm a fan of podcasts. I listen to them many times, as fast as it could go. Reading is really amazing because it forces you to be really active in the process. And if there's one brain exercise that I would recommend, it's just reading, because your brain is like a muscle. It grows stronger with use, right? But it's use it or lose it. And if you want, just like you have a personal trainer that makes your muscles stronger, give it more energy, give more flexibility and speed, I want to be your brain trainer, right? Your brain coach, and take this muscle and make it sharper and give it more energy and give it more strength and power and give it more flexibility and agility. And
so we should still be reading paper books.
Especially paper books, because I get this question a lot. Even on my podcast, we get this question saying, do you read digital, like on a Kindle, or do you read paper? Paper all the way. Research has shown reading actually paper is better. Even in fact, taking notes, we were talking about taking notes and journaling, taking notes with a paper and pen is better than doing it digitally, better than doing that. And so it's been typing, and it's interesting. And one of the reasons why, besides the viscosity of, the sense of touch that way, is because nobody could write as fast as someone could talk. So it forces you to really, when you're listening to a podcast or listening to a class, a teacher teach you, it forces you to filter the important information from the non-important, so you're only writing the key ideas that are most important for you.